Shall we start? Yeah. Great. Well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming to the Weaving Threads webinar. I'm Persephone Pearl. I'm a co-director of Onca Art and Environment Gallery in Brighton, and Onca is co-hosting this event as part of the Extracting Us online exhibition and conversation. We're recording it, so you'll be able to find it on the Onca YouTube channel later, and I guess that means turning off your video if you actually it only records the shared screen. So the exhibition is co-hosted by Onca alongside the University of Brighton's Centre for Spatial, Environmental and Cultural Politics, the WeGo network, that's the Wellbeing, Ecology, Gender and Community Research Network, the Women in Action on Mining in Asia Collaborative Network, and the Sustainable Development and Atmospheres of Violence Research Project. So yeah, a quick outline of the session. The co-curators will introduce the speakers and the theme of the event, and then we'll have some creative contributions from some of the exhibiting artists. And then after that, there'll be time for questions from you, questions and conversation with everyone here. And the event officially ends at 4:30. We made it quite leisurely because the previous two had felt quite rushed and cramped because the themes are so big and complex. We wanted to kind of make space for a conversation. Finishes officially at 4, but we will kind of continue with an informal conversation space if it feels right. So yeah, that's that. And without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Becky Elmhurst, who's one of the co-curators, who's going to introduce the speakers.
Hello, thank you very much, Persephone, and thank you so much to Onca for hosting the event for us. I'd like to introduce the speakers, and I now realise that this is going to be a bit difficult because I have a room full of other people. So welcome everybody. I'm going to go around in turn and just name the speakers, and they can introduce themselves and say a little about the work that they have done. But before that, I want to just say a little bit about what the Extracting Us project has been about. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to have a look at the exhibition. We really wanted to bring together these artists and researchers who are thinking about extractivism differently. So looking at extractivism and all of the complexities of relations that exist in extractive landscapes. And I think as what we want to do today is maybe explore some of the connecting themes between these different works. So I'm going to hand over now to sort of introduce each of the presenters, and they can say a little bit about themselves, and also the curators, and they can say a little bit just to introduce the work that they're connected with before we go into an opportunity for them to speak in turn. So I'm going to start with Negar.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the introduction, Becky, and thanks also for the organizers for this great event, and for all the work put also for this exhibition. So my name is Negar. I'm a lecturer in human geography at the University of Bristol. I'm also a feminist geographer and an ethnographer. And my work focuses on resource struggles in Tajikistan, looking at the transformation of the social fabric of places, mainly looking at gendered and intergenerational relationships in a co-extractive landscape. So my more artistic and visual work has developed around the production of photographic materials, as well as an ethnographic documentary called Como, and also a short animation piece called Nadira Cold Woman. So both the ethnographic film and the animated ethnographic film focus on questions of exclusion. So the ethnographic film focuses on the extractive landscape in general and intergenerational relationships. And the animated ethnographic film focuses on the portrait of one stigmatized female miner. I'm not going to go further because there are lots of contributors, but yeah, thanks again.
Okay, so I'm going to move now to Ilona, who can introduce herself and her role in this organisation.
Hello everyone, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm one of the co-curators for these exhibition and conversation, and yeah, that's been a great journey. So over to the next person.
And I'm working across my screen. The next person on my screen is Vicenza.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm Vicenza. I'm based in Ireland at the National University of Ireland, Galway. And my contribution is Clan or Commodity. And it's some photo montages and a video that looks at resistance to gold mining in the Sperrin Mountains in the north of Ireland. Yeah, looking forward to talk more. Thanks.
Thank you. Alice.
Hi, thanks Becky. Hi everyone. Yes, my name's Alice. I am both part of the curatorial team of the Extracting Us exhibition, and I've made a little contribution for it as well. And I'm part of the WeGo network and located at the University of Brighton. And so just to quickly introduce my artistic contribution, so that builds on my PhD research, which is about how communities are resisting extractivism and fossil fuels here very near Brighton actually, and kind of exploring the kind of unspectacular scenes of extractivism and everyday kinds of resistance and protests that are going on to make visible the multiple injustices. And we've done some fun work with clay that we've dug from near the fracking site.
Thank you. Ryu.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Lingu. Most people call me Iris. I am a third-year PhD student at University of Sussex, PhD student in development studies. My exhibition piece is the extraction duo, focusing on road, on the logistic side of extractivism. I would rather introduce myself as an ethnographer. I study economics, sociology, anthropology, and now I'm using ethnographic methods plus archival methods to getting to know more about adapting environmental change in Eastern Himalayas. So besides research, I also write for the media. I also write for children. I wrote children's books to translate my research in displacement and environmental change. Thank you.
Thank you. Pedro.
Hello, my name is Pedro. I am an anthropologist and researcher based at the Social Science Institute in the University of Lisbon in Portugal. My focus of research is on refugee camps, resettlement schemes, in essence, situations of forced displacement and the places that the displaced populations are eventually hosted. Be them refugee camps, resettlement schemes, mainly in Southern Africa. My piece, I don't know how to define it. It's a sort of a film essay, like ethnographic film. It's you will see it and make your own mind about it. So, and yes, essentially it is.
Thank you, Pedro. Micah.
Now you hear me. Hello, everybody. It's Micah Gulati. I'm a visual and social anthropologist, and so I'm still affiliated to my university in France, in Paris, École des études en sciences sociales, and I am looking for a postdoc, and meanwhile being an art curator. So my work is about my field work, and is about the country where it's Trinidad and Tobago, and after my PhD, I kept relationships and actually traveling with to the artist community in Trinidad, where the reason why this project that you see, thanks to extractive artists, show is made.
Thank you. Mai, are you there? Siti Maimuna.
Hi everyone, my name is Siti Maimuna. I'm part of the curatorial team, also WEGO, and I'm based at University of Passau. My research is about the ethnicity, mining, and gender. So it's also related with my contribution at Extracting Us. It's about Balian, Saman in extractive landscape. Try to show my confusing and also my question about the two phases of the care and not innocent care. So yeah, thank you, Becky.
Thank you. And Mary, I see your microphone, but not your video. Mary Menton.
There we are. Hi, hi everyone. Thanks. I'm really glad we're all here. I'm Mary Minton. I'm a research fellow in environmental justice at the University of Sussex and part of the Sustainable Development and Atmospheres of Violence project that helped bring some of the Brazilian artists to the collection.
And Lucy.
Yes, hi, I'm Lucy Choules. I'm an artist and independent researcher. My praxis encompasses environmental collapse and the documents, objects and afterlife of performance. I founded and coordinate the artist network Temporal School of Experimental Geography, and my interests are in artist-led fieldwork. I also lead workshops to develop fluid writing structures and methods for performing duration. I've made a lot of work in post-industrial landscapes, and I was due to give a live performance as part of the original conference, but this is not possible, so I didn't make a contribution to the actual exhibition. But my interest in the Extracting Us project is in the ideas of time as a critical tool in the activities of reflection and projection, and the extension of this experience as a sense of agency, and that's me.
Thank you. Now, I'm not sure if I've missed anybody because I know a couple of people were going to be late. I don't know whether Ilona has any insight into that or whether we just continue.
I can't see anyone else, so unless they manifest themselves. So yeah, I just continue, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you everybody. I'm really happy to see everybody here. We wanted to maybe start by one of the purposes of today is really to think about extractivism differently. We started on the exhibition of weaving some threads between the artist's work and research projects, and it's really interesting for us to sort of develop some of these themes and think them through. So it's really, and that was really extending from what we'd sort of curated as a collective, framing this call and the approach to extractivism in Extracting Us, which is really kind of working through feminist political ecology beyond the spectacular, as Alice mentioned. And what we're really interested in is how each of the works really attend to the complexity of relations that take place in extractive environments. So we'd sort of begun by pulling out some of the connecting themes, but this is what we want to explore a little bit more today with everybody who's here, and to think about some of those questions about what connects the works shown in the exhibition. How can we start to make sense of these works as a corpus? And how does the exhibition help us to think differently about and perhaps challenge extractivism? And to kind of get us thinking about that, I'd like you to, as a sort of exercise for everybody in the audience, is to start thinking now, but keep it to yourself and see how this maybe evolves in your own mind. A word that extractivism means to you. And perhaps this word may evolve as we work through. So I'm going to hand over now to Lucy, who will get us started in our thinking with a performance that she's going to share with us. So, Luce, over to you.
Thanks, Becky. Well, last year I developed a fieldwork programme for an art centre in Barcelona and a curating network in Madrid. And today I'll perform a review I wrote for that project. It feels relevant to our ongoing discussions as it contains ideas of time, agency, and process. I'll read it. Here I am, a boulder transported in from afar, an active mass of volume and weight, fixed to perform the erratic. I'm considering my position carefully from the edges, around shrub structures, trees in grids, and among grass tufts, delicate weeds. All together we thrive in textile ruin. This morning, my boulder premise is set and fluid, the placement of weathering. To discuss a subject becomes a question of language and interpretation. Rocks, a plant, 3D printing, a ceramic fragment, and thin air are introduced as the sun reaches its midpoint. Erosion, disintegration, collapsing structures, all actions in the natural and built environment. Surroundings imagined, weathering actions become performed through writing, and the haptic exchange of words becomes important. Expression and details all surface. When weather is effectuated, the dynamics of reciprocity reveal imperfections, and in that moment the object becomes whole with all its characteristics. To be flawed is natural. These scripted images of cracks and fissures, materials and matter collected together for closer reviewing at other times, unspecified for now. What then is crumbled, smashed, or dissolved? The mass transported and transformed contains light and heavy elements, and weaknesses reveal strength. It's late. Waiting becomes an act that must be performed in cold light until the true dark of the black box is triggered. We are here in this space. We are all together. Presentations become apertures to the underlying structures of working in outdoor studios, and the field expands to accommodate the practice of performing. Survey and live event become one, held temporarily in the context of process. The field site becomes a field work, where buried objects of inquiry are subject to the processing of change. Methods for recording waste ground substructure. The fieldwork is an approach of archaeological reverse, a pre-performed history brought to the here and now, holding the surface intrusions of time. Other works demonstrate the breadth of investigation for process-driven explorations, location, relocation, dislocation, and translocation. When does the work in one field end and the work in another field begin? And what are its documents? The living laboratory, a plant cycle from seed to leaf, the touch of which is at once pleasure and damage, and death, an unfolding of place for life in an artwork, observing time and decay, environs for micro-inhabitants and the sub-microscopic, the non-human bodies, nanomatter, but much significance. Family stories unearth the hidden narrative of time and telling. The resurfacing of fragmented memory in scripts and voice becomes an image of performance. Buried remains, and the vast future, a post-human space imagined through film, as clear as it ever was, observing the single event of geology, giving light to the last flicker of a dying star. In the civil collapse of growth without regard of resources, environmental resistance is the reserve of nature. Humanity is not safe. Itinerant action will be necessary. Here I am, again, canopy above, roots below. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks so much. We thought we'd introduce this next piece with your contribution. Thanks so much for doing that. And now I'd like to open the floor to all our contributors, and we discussed how we'd be able to start weaving a little bit together the works that are in this exhibition, which we've kind of continuously realizing is quite a large corpus. And so this is really the beginning of making these connections. And we thought today we'd explore some connections around the theme of time and temporalities, and it's quite tentacular in the way in which that connects to different works. But that's going to be our kind of our guiding thread today, and we're going to just have our contributors speak in turn for about 5 minutes to share some thoughts on connections around that theme and related areas. So I'm going to hand over, and we have an order, but I can remind people. So we're going to start with Vicenza.
Thanks, Ilona. That's great. And yeah, thanks again to everyone who's involved. It was really amazing opportunity to be involved in the exhibition, and all of the work is so fabulous. And I really hope that all the viewers today enjoyed looking through it as much as I did, and being able to like chat to all the contributors and make these connections. It's been a really lovely opportunity. Yeah, I think first of all that all of the work does this amazing job of sort of challenging this idea that extractive landscapes are these wild wilderness areas devoid of people, and it brings back these everyday encounters of the people who live and struggle in these landscapes really well. And as Ilona was saying, one of the themes we picked out was the idea of different concepts of time and temporalities that run through the exhibition. So I was really drawn and felt a connection to the work of Alice Owen, and especially her video piece called Drilling Through the Anthropocene. I thought it was really powerful for showing two very different understandings of time in the one shot and space. So you have this kind of capitalist extractivist time, which is like seen through the lorries that are coming back and forward to the site, a very short-term profit-oriented time. And then you have this deep time expressed through the images of fossil-filled rocks, which talk of this very like deep time, more than human time, which runs through millennia. And you can see it there on the screen now. And yeah, I think that's something I was trying to capture in my own work as well, by superimposing the layers that represent two very different ways of looking at the world, relating to the land, knowing the world, and relating to each other as well, and also to non-human nature. As well as to, yeah, again, very different concepts of time within the same space. So yeah, the maps are kind of offering this very detached, disembodied view of the extractivist gaze from above. And then you have these grounded and embodied images from the site of resistance in the Sperrins that are trying to speak to this deeper sense of time that connects the community to the ancestors, and also to future generations, and also to the non-human nature that have their very own rhythm of time as well. And yeah, hopefully that's highlighting the agency of the community's activism and the non-humans in that space. And I think that's yeah, a theme that weaves through all the work in the exhibition as well. And the reason why I think this is so powerful in challenging extractivist logics is because it extends beyond, you know, this sense of individual knowing, kind of collectivizes it beyond what yeah, we can know as an individual, into the past and into the future as well. And yeah, because of this, I felt a really good link as well to Margaret Scatz's work on Chanted memories, which is a really powerful piece showing women chanting about getting strength from their ancestors, the women who protected the forests who came before them. And yeah, I saw a lot of parallels in the narratives they were saying, through to like the Irish tradition of storytelling and the narratives that the community in the Irish context were using as well. Yeah, so and yeah, I think that these were really nice threads to connect the different pieces in the exhibition, this idea of multiple temporalities. And yeah, and I think it's as well, it's very politically powerful to challenge this kind of capitalist extractivist logic as well. So yeah, that's just my reflections on the weavings between the pieces. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Vicenza. And so I think we'll go on to Alice.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, just playing with my screen. Yeah, so I was thinking around the same pieces actually. I think there was a lot of resonances between these three, and thinking about not only the kind of different superimposed timescales that we're thinking with, but also where the kind of possibilities are for agency, for action, for activism within and kind of because of these different timescales. So what you mentioned there, Vicenza, was exactly what I was thinking of. So in some instances, we have people who are finding the agency and the need to act because they are fighting actively for the continuity of their own, not only timescales, but it's almost ontological, isn't it? The way cosmovisions and ways of understanding and thinking with the world are related. And in your piece, Vicenza, with the kind of memories that are traced on the landscapes, with the kind of was it the medieval rocks, and then the more recent memories of more recent religions, and how these are part of what's being fought for. And then it's really not only remembered but lived through Margarita's work, where we see these women singing songs that have been handed down through generations, but also finding the need to create new songs to ask for solidarity. And they're resisting oil extraction in the Amazon. And it's just really interesting to think about that in conversation with the context I'm researching in, which is on the kind of complete other side of the colonial difference, where a lot of our connections to the land are long forgotten. The people who are indigenous to these lands have had their knowledges long erased. And so the kind of ideas that I've been thinking with from this kind of European context, and also in the context of anti-fossil fuel extraction and climate justice, is we have these really broad and almost apocalyptic narratives of the Anthropocene, which thrusts us into deep time, which can also be quite paralyzing, you know, to think of, oh, what can we really do when whatever we do will be it's just a blink of an eye in geological time. And then you've also got these kind of futures which are quite apocalyptic of climate change, even though they are already present for a lot of people who we are kind of disconnected with, and not only time but also space. So yeah, it's those questions of how to find the agency within these times. So sometimes finding the need to place the world you're fighting for against the world you're fighting against the kind of imaginaries that come with the speculation of extractivism, as you show in your the overlay of those geological maps, Vicenza, and also in the places where I'm researching, where there are these logics of making the earth a knowable and extractable resource and putting something different there, and also not only thinking about something different, but by taking part in direct action, which is so embodied. If you've ever done anything like that, even been to a protest or written a letter, it's something where you're in the moment, you're doing with your mind, and your body is somehow cathartic to engage in something that takes into account the histories, but also the futures of these other extractive life worlds. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Alice. And so we'll move on to continue weaving with Negar.
Great, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for suggesting this theme of temporality. I think there are like lots of interesting different temporalities that are explored throughout the work that is presented in this exhibition. And I think like I can see four main ones. There is one around a time at T0, so a form of experiential and phenomenological approach to time through the relation with the human, the non-human, and the resource that is present in lots of the work presented. And I think there is also three other types of temporalities. There is first the contextualization of extractive landscapes within like history, present time, and future. There is also the time of resistance that is also present in lots of the work that is presented here. And also there is the time and the temporality of the artist or the researcher doing the work. And I think that somehow my work touches on like actually three of like these temporalities with relation to extractivism. And like the work of Marilyn or Edgar, for instance, it draws a portrait of people in a specific extractive landscape. So really focused on like communities in this extractive landscape and building a form of linear narrative of what has happened to these communities in this extractive landscape and to the people there. And so the short ethnographic film draws actually the connections between past, present of dispossession, a nostalgic past, and the future as well, with relations of intergenerationality. So we see an older man telling the story of the extractive landscape and its changes, and then a younger girl working in the mines. And at the same time, we also sense a form of like fear and anxiety. And I think it reminds us of like the slow violence in the way of environmental struggles. And this refers to what Becky was saying at the beginning, which is that these violences are not always spectacular, but they can be really slow and following a temporality that is actually very different from other forms of violence. So I'm using here the concept of slow violence from Robert Nixon. And they're also deeply embodied. And I think that a lot of the work that we see here touches on the corporality of this violence. And this is intrinsically linked to questions of resistance as well. So in the work of Edgar, we see direct forms of resistance, as well as the photos that Alice showed of the struggles and the direct resistance around the fracking sites that are also deeply embodied. But some forms of resistance are also extremely slow. They're extremely slow and they're extremely subtle and they're very ambivalent. And I think my work touches also on like this specific temporality of resistance. That is, the women, the female miners in Tajikistan cannot go in the street and resist. We're in an authoritarian regime where this is not a possibility. And the forms of agency that exist and the form of resistances that exist in this context are much more intimate, personal, individual, and very ambivalent. And I think the work that I'm showing tries to touch on that as well. And finally, in terms of time, there is also the time and the temporality of the relationship between the researcher and the researched. And I think this is something that is present in some of the work, and I'm thinking about the work of Pedro here, who uses an ethnographic documentary essay And I found it really interesting to see how he uses a voiceover to actually describe the site and the kind of struggle between extractive space between the refugee camp and the mining site. And the voiceover bring us back to the presence and the existence of the researcher and the type of relationship actually that is created between the place and the researcher. And I think this is something that is also very present in my work, where I'm also emphasizing the fact that the story that I'm telling is a story that is based on a relationship and long-term ethnographic work. Yeah, so I think I'm going to stop here.
Thanks, Mega. Really fascinating. And we'll move on to Mai.
Thank you, Ilona. Working in extractivism almost 20 years, especially mining in Indonesia, I feel struggling to define what, where, and how care in the extractives ruin context. When we just see the relation between the corporation, the machine, with human and nature. And then extracting us, the exhibition in the context of connection, is helped me to unpack the context of care. So feminist political ecology through the care is persistent power, space, and meaning in the context of extractive, which is able to create, give more space, the survival space in the ruins landscape, the struggle space, also the space of intergenerational knowledge production, the space of resistance. The care to the human body and nature body is possible transform to the resistance, as expressed in the connection of contribution of Edgar, Vicenza, Margarita, Tapestry, Maika, and also participant and Marlene. Is resistant to genocide, is also care about intergenerational festival for remembering the story as a witness, and also to see differently behind the wonderland is the landscape ruin, for example. But in the chain of time and temporality and also landscape, it's also so that there is no innocent care. In my photographs about Balians, the way how the time and also space change is made Balians like opening also space for, because a Balian is the shaman, is the mediator between human and non-human nature, between the spirit, between inside the world and outside the world. But then the landscape change, the temporality, it's make them also opening space to mediator, as mediator of the extractives. So it's so in the connection that care is actually have multi-meanings. When the landscape change, when there is the time change, the temporality, it's important to see extractive in the different way, through the care. And the care is not just care, but also no innocent care. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mai. Speaking about landscapes and change, we'll move on to Ryu.
Thanks, Ilona. So as Ilona mentioned, my research is about environmental change, how the mountain dweller sensing, feeling, reasoning environmental change, and how they define and the meaning of resource extraction in their sense in the Himalayas. So the reason I want to join this exhibition was because I want to try to convey ideas and include valuable stories that would not definitely not go into my thesis into a different way to let it meet with more people and maybe stimulate more conversations. So another layer of that is that while I was doing field work, I reflected also my extraction of information from the community, the indigenous community I work with, and their behaviors, their terms as extractions in their sense. And sometimes it's a transformation of nature, which is my second research subject. So I see extractivism more as a mentality, something more soft, something more, it's tangible, but it's soft, it's close, it's mundane, rather than a contested power structure. My original title is to focus on the road and see what brings in and what comes out, and then I use the woolen thread as the token of this idea. So it covers the relationality, and also it covers the agency, as you can show in Kondroma's story, how she took the opportunity to sort of wave herself into the environmental change in natural, economic and social aspects. I was also curious about how the extractivist mentality becomes okay for all the stakeholders, including the non-human parts, if they gave consent. And I noticed that the roads, vehicles in literal or metaphorical sense are the carriers of materially make extraction happen. And that's why I focus on that in my exhibition piece. And I suppose my entry to the collective is more putting an extension to invite the audience to think and experience, and what makes the exploitation, what makes the extreme injustice possible, what goes in that trigger all these changes locally, and what brings out and bridging the resources extracted from these specific sites into our everyday life and become objects that live with us day and night. That's sort of my ambition about it. So talking about time, I think time is very much visible in Kondroma's story. I provided sort of a clip of our conversation happening on the fieldwork site where I was doing the extraction of her life story, which she was happily sharing with us, even offering us drinks. And the agency can be identified with the roads, building, and symbolized with the knitting threads that I put into it. So all these little ideas was just to, originally I want the audience to be able to put their bodies into these objects in order to feel how the temporality and how the maturity was brought from there to near. And now I have turned it into a graphic, but still I want to invite audiences into this sort of intimacy to experience that. So the assemblage of this temporality, I think, is very visible with geographical and industrial feature in so many fellow artists' work, and their work are much more, in my sense, more impactful, especially through the motion media. They brought the sensation and extractivist process together onto our vision. And they also let us hear the voices of the people who used to be seen as hopeless faces on the newspaper picture. And I also got ideas about sort of action strategies from fellow artists' work. I will list. I will talk about a few. I can't cover more. So, like Marlene's work, I really like how she visualized in a collective way to design the representation together. So made the process of making these portraits a story within the story. It shows the sort of action behind the work. And I also like Alice's idea of molding, having one material and then transforming into another, which gives it extra meanings. It shows the potential of turning something that really trigger the unjust feeling into something. It seems that there is something to work on it, to turn it. And I really like Nega's film, the animation documentary. I actually I saw it twice. One's on the website and the other's on the Royal Anthropological Institute conference. I think through artwork, it did create a new realm to some sense, that in retelling the stories, there's a new realm like lying there that we can sort of transcend from the social facts and then reorganize the memories to search for some not just about agencies, also about strategies from it. And I also like Tapestry collective projects work. So as far as I know, it's from a 5-year project, and lots of photos came out from the engaging researchers as well as the participants of the Photo Voice workshops. So it shows a kind of togetherness being with them, although not able to provide solution immediately, but facing the extractivist, the extreme unjust together. It's also meaningful, very much in this sense. So I'm going to stop here.
Thank you. Thanks for you. And while talking about the landscapes and industrial change and all this and the infrastructures, I guess we'll move on to Micah.
Okay, hello everybody. So yes, my work is well, it's a fictional work and it's about fiction. So I would love maybe to share a little bit together. Do you hear me well? Yeah. And just a little bit the process, that how it worked, and why, for example, extractiveness appealed me so much in order to apply. And actually, it's really because of the title of the project, which that started completing my mind in order to, because it relates me exactly with what were my feelings when I was looking at my photos, and when I was actually imagining my photos when I am in the field, which is not anymore a field because my PhD is finished, so it became a kind of second home. And so the feeling, the empathy that I have with the title and the theme of this project of Extracting Us is really because I feel extracted as well as these lands are. And I have the feeling with the exchanges with usually the community, artistic communities of the country of Trinidad and Tobago, who I'm in relation with every day, that everybody more or less feels extracted somehow. And that's where I started my journey about landscaping. Everything started just very quickly in terms of time as well, because of course I'm an anthropologist and an ethnographer, and you spend time exactly on the place. And it's because of this time that I recognized that there was actually the work, my work is mainly talking, now that I was listening to my colleagues before me, is mainly a work of time of oblivion, where, and at the same time, where the time creates actually a kind of visual costume that is based on representation. So what is represented as national landscape, what is not represented, what you want to invisibilize, and what do you forget about your national landscape. So the extractive part, actually, an economy of the country is mainly unrepresented by the nation, and which is actually basically represented mainly on the currency, on national currency, paper currency. But everywhere else, the country, it is represented mainly by colorful, extra tropical landscapes that should respond to the kind of foreigner expectation what should be a Caribbean country. So with the discussion and the collaboration with the communities, artistic community on site, I started to, it's even on time work, because I started to make this digital collage a long time ago in the middle of my PhD. And then little by little, with our discussions, I started to find a way to understand why I was doing this kind of collages that are actually explaining explicitly a kind of third temporal space, that everything is floating, but you don't know what is real, you don't know what actually does exist for real. And my challenge was with these photo collages was to ask to the viewers, which at the very beginning were the people that were watching, the first people that were watching my works, that were like the people of the communities in Trinidad. What do you really see there? I mean, do we see on a normal, with our eyes, do we see the landscape? Is the landscape that we see what it really is, or what you are thinking and you have been trained all your life to see? And the extractivism, in the sense, is very important because it becomes us. So, so it's part of, it becomes so regularized in terms of normal landscape, which, for example, Luce was saying, the field site becomes a field work. So the field site became so normal that the most of the people around me forgot visually that extractivism was around them. And that is very, very different from other colleagues that they just talk to talk about the work, because, and that is because it's disturbing the landscape, but at the same time being so slow, it becomes an integral part of the landscape itself. And so this is what is about the work, and about, just to finish, my interest about extractive us is because everything started because there is a national folklore figure on the island that is a kind of vampire. They call it Fuksukuyant, and it's true that every time I'm going to the beach with friends, and I'm going like to pick up the children or some other friends with my car, and I see these pumps that actually are like usually they are, for example, in the garden of or like close to the garden of a school, or like on the corner of the beach where everybody goes. And that was what I was thinking. I mean, this is a sukuyant that sucks black blood, but it's around us, so it's extracting us at the same time. And this is just to show you a little backstage of what you see in these photos. And thanks to extracting us to let me do it.
Thanks, Micah. And I think we had spoken yesterday as well as how your work resonates also with, or you found resonances with Pedro's work as well. And so we thought that we'd move on to Pedro to speak about connections.
Thank you, Alona, and thank you. I mean, you have said already many things. I would like to probably start with an idea that Nagar already mentioned about this idea from Nixon, the idea of slow violence, which is actually pervasive in all this. I mean, not only pervasive around us, but also, of course, in the pieces that compose this exhibition. But if we start looking around, the slow violence actually is in our daily lives, in the sense of Nixon, in the sense of, and I would like to move forward because I'll continue on this, the idea of this place in place. I mean, it's no longer, because I work with forced displacement, not only due to conflict and violence, but also due to developmental endeavors. And it's very interesting to understand how even before the very displacement of the bodies of the people that actually have to move at a certain point, but that very displacement starts way before with this slow violence. So the places that they live in wither way before they are themselves displaced. So talking about displacement without moving. The places in which we live are no longer what they used to be. And it's very interesting because this resonates with other works beyond those that I will probably mention, but I was thinking about the chanting communities in the Wawari, I don't know if this is the right pronunciation, and how this also relates to the landscape. And by the moment that the landscape is no longer there, the way we relate to our environments can no longer be enacted to some certain point. These memories no longer exist. I mean, if we start thinking about the olive tree in Palestine and the way the olive trees are the places of mourning, the only places that are left, if they were left there, these very olive trees, because everything else is gone. So the idea of landscape as repository of memories, but also of much more than memories, and what the memories in the storytelling, because I mean, in the end of the day, we are built of stories and of storytelling, and it's and the only reason probably that why we exist is because we tell stories and we live within these stories. Anyway, moving beyond that, and I think this idea of extracting, extracting gas or an extractivism writ large is extremely interesting. It mirrors, I mean, it's not only a metaphor for sure, but the way matter is separated in these huge processing plants. Now you separate in order to separate the ore, you produce tons of waste, and that very waste can be also thought as or compared to the countless people that are directly or indirectly affected by these endeavors, in the sense that the people in excess that shouldn't be there, they are hindering development, they are hindering economic expansion and so forth. So, but my work tries to, I mean, I'm a researcher, anthropologist. I've been conducting field work in this region in northern Zambia for the past 8 or 9 years, and yeah, in the film that you can see is it's a collection of audiovisual elements that were never really assembled into something, and the first part of the film delves into that. If you want to waste your time watching it, but what concerns me more these days is this idea of not only how do we move beyond, how do we craft an alternative, how do we reinvent the possibility, and like beyond the idea of staying with, how do we stay with the trouble now, using Netsing's proposal, and what are the pockets of refuge that are left in some instances. But I mean, there's a long genealogy of namely in the geographies I work. I mean, displaced populations that ended up living in this camp, which of course people from Angola, from Rwanda, from Burundi, have a long history of dispossession behind them. So this is not new. I mean, probably it's new for this generation, but it's not new if we look in the longue durée or not so longue durée, how these things unfolded from colonial endeavors, wars, extractivism these days, developmental, anyway, you name it. And just to conclude and try to connect with the works, which are, I mean, all of them, I might find something that I can identify with. Of course, I would highlight 3 of them. I think Marie-Hélène's idea of this idea of the displacement in place is extremely, it's crystal clear in her work. I mean, people that somehow remain there or around the place of where this dam, Bellomonte Dam, was put up, and how the places that these people used to know withered away, and they're still around there, and they are watching the places being washed out by this new water body. And then I think also Sandro Simon's work, it's extremely interesting. I mean, in many ways, of course, but one that I find is how it sends us to an elsewhere. And is elsewhere, it's not only through the canister, that bucket, or yeah, that ends up becoming different things now. But in the layers of sound, that also senses. In my work, I use that. I overlap the sound not only of the narration, but also as if there was an environment of war still behind, lingering there, to create also this other meaning. And to conclude, I think Micah's, because Micah's work is, and she was talking about the sort of normalizing of this landscape. We no longer even realize that how different it is, or what if it's even there. And I don't know if it's visible, it's not so evident, but in this place that I was working, and it would be difficult to actually have one postcard with what I'm going to say, but the extractive site is next to the refugee camp, and the extractive site, which is huge, had to also gather all the animals that live there, and it created a small wildlife reserve within the extractive park. And next to it, there is the compound, the gated community for the expats that work there. So you have these 4 enclaves of different sorts of refuges, and in which the postcard that Micah offered us through collage actually already exists. And so, thank you.
Thanks so much, Pedro. Yeah, I'm just feeling so moved. And we are very lucky that Sandro is able to join us now. You weren't here at the beginning, so we did a round of introduction, but now you're here. So Sandro, you can, I know you didn't hear everything, but I'm sure you've heard what Pedro said, which is a really nice link to your work. So maybe you have a few words.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ilona. Thank you, everyone, and sorry for being late. I'm contributing Bidon Monde to this exhibition. I have to do this a bit louder here. And yeah, I think some might have seen it. It's 6 video loops, and it was conceptualized as an installation, and now it's online and it's before your eyes and ears. So the basic idea is to have those images from the Sine Saloum Delta in Senegal, where I do ethnographic research, and sort of contrast it and intermingle it with a sound from around the world. So it's about this relation between sound and image, and we're quite, the image for us is quite dominant, and we're quite used, I think, in videos that the sound sort of carries the image, and here it's going somewhere else, and it contrasts, or it takes us somewhere else than just the image. And maybe where Micah asked, what do you see, you as the observer and the listener, I might ask, what do you hear? And so it is a sensual, an emotional engagement, I hope, and which might also lead to a sort of irritation. And there might be the shift of a reconceptualization, a sort of how do these things actually work together or not. And Bidon Monde tries to show a sort of relation across scale, across places. It connects the Sine Saloum Delta in Senegal with sites of extraction of palm oil and of petrol. And it's about cycles and lines of time. It's also about compressing time, but it condenses something within those video loops that has different temporalities, and different temporalities than we're usually experienced during our day. And I found this interesting because I feel extractivism is so much, I think maybe someone already said it, I think we talked about yesterday in a small preparation talk. I feel extractivism is so much pointing toward the future and towards a certain point, consumption, right? And then it's sort of the end of the design, but then starts the second, third, fourth life of things, and this is where this video also start. And I do follow the thing in this work. You don't see a lot of people, different than in my ethnographic work. And it's, yeah, about these weaving temporalities through things. There's plastic canisters that have several lives, and here they are condensed in one exhibitive piece. So the experience of time is up to you. How long do you want to follow or stay in the video loop? That's your choice. And so why loops? Why do I invite you to stay or get into those loops? I think they sort of point towards envisioned unlimited growth, which is obviously not possible. And they can at the same time wear you down. The sound is not always pleasant, and some of the loops, some of the sounds are quite visceral, and so they also transport this cycle of extractive capitalism that we find us in. So it's indeed a play with place and time. And palm oil and petrol are also vicious materials, that they're also malleable. For me, the fact that they can be turned into energy, which then fuels and brings together all kinds of stuffs and things and feeds all kinds of people, makes them extremely powerful and also quite hard to grasp. But then there are also people who use and reconfigure stuff beyond the initial conception of designers, policymakers, etc. And that's maybe the hopeful part of my work, that as you see here, it's all kinds of different reusages. So to conclude, to relate my work, yeah, I think on a methodological level, my work relates to, for example, to Maika and Vicenza and Pedro. I feel we're all trying to reconfigure and contrast images and sound in order to evoke certain irritations and invitations for reflections on one's own perceptions and concepts. So to sort of work with those gaps. And then on a thematic level, I think, especially with regards to relation across scale, I feel my work might relate to Marilyn, Maika, and the Tapestry Collective. I see how we try to relate different phenomena and localities to each other by storytelling or by visual and audiovisual collage. And the quest thereby is to make connections tangible that are often complex and vast and are sometimes made invisible. So I think that's my 5 cents. Thank you for listening. And yeah.
Thanks so much, Sandra. So glad you could join us. And we thought we'd conclude this hour of weaving threads with Luce again. If you have any other thoughts from the different contributions.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, I'm not part of the exhibition because of this live performance idea, but I thought I'd make one more contribution. But before I do, I just wanted to say with the exhibition, I just feel like it's extraction is the premise for this work, but it's also the, it exists in the actual making of the work. So the reflections from the research, the agency whilst we're engaged in this work, and the sort of future projection, which is the discussion, this is part of it. If you see like a past, present, future, just to sort of echo some other people's words. But I was thinking about timescales. Timescales kind of time is such an elastic thing. You know, we're looking at sort of deep time all the way through to something that's really, really present and happening on a sort of micro level. I made a few notes where I was thinking about sort of the memories and storytelling, you know, what the extraction that we're sort of undertaking, you know, in that field as well. You know, we approach a field with our own interests and with our own kind of possibilities, and with a way to be able to kind of bring this stuff together, you know, bring the interests together through different types of work. And actually what's really interesting for me is across the website of the exhibition is actually all the processes are being shown as well. You know, that's really interesting for me. But normally you see finished artworks, you know, but this seems to be the beginning of something. You know, I read something recently, what was that, through the Ratti Foundation in Italy. You know, I had something popped in my inbox about from the archive, and it talks about moving image, but it says we are, you know, they're talking about we are recording and watching ourselves, you know, and that cinema or film in particular, every moment, including the one to come, is only the repetition of something that has already happened. You know, this idea of every time we move forward, it's actually, when we see something, it's actually already been made, and we're just seeing it again. So we're kind of making this stuff in our own image. And I thought, just to sort of conclude, I had a example of a fieldwork document I made as part of the project in Barcelona last year. And I just wanted to take people into the field, seeming as this is the contribution you can't see on the website. So I thought I'd make it a live space. This is itinerant actions, and this is number 7, but I will share with Ilona the link so that you can see on Curators Network in Madrid. I have a link to all the different itinerant actions, but this is number 7. A track of dust and rock climbs above villages and farms, past worked land and close-knit pine, and broken walls of bright dry stone, to fence and chain, hides and holds a whole of industry gone. A quarry site grows over with grasses and scrub, hard-stemmed plants determined to stay in the hollow where moisture gathers in shadows, and metre-high walls of cleaved bedrock exposed reveals the character of small-scale extraction, where roots now find air, follow water, and buildings clustered and reformed tell stories of fire and liquid rock, arches repurposed, frame history evolving, natural material made visible, scattered across, invites a rethinking of permanence and processing of time. My contribution.
Thank you so much, Luz. Thanks for bringing us back to the field, where a lot of where many and all of these contributions are, connected to. We talked also about, that connection to kind of the field and fieldwork in our previous conversation. Yes, I really hope that that's kind of sparked some different ideas about what extracting us or what extractivism might mean to you, to all those present. So please continue to share some of those thoughts in the chat, and I'll hand over to Becky now for the next bit.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to all the contributors for sharing their connections and interweavings. We've now got a little bit of time for some questions from everybody in the audience. If you would like to, let me just move my screen a little bit. Yes, if you would like to pose any questions for any of the contributors, or maybe offer some thoughts that you want to share with the group here. I'm very interested to see the chatters and people placing their thoughts in there, but some specific questions. So throw that open to the floor. If you want to ask a question, you can use the chat, or I think given the numbers that we have, we might be able for you to just unmute your microphone and go ahead. I think that's probably manageable.
I don't know, maybe I can start, Becky?
Yeah, thank you, Irene.
Yes. So no, thank you to all the contributors, the presenters. It was really interesting, really moving. I explored the website for a long while yesterday, but then now hearing the voices of the people who worked on it was much more powerful. So thank you very much. Me and 3 other colleagues, friends, also presented an exhibition at Pollen called Troubling Waterscapes. So we start this exhibition from the village of Prava, rural village in Maharashtra, when one of us conducted field work last year. And then starting from the story of this village, with we try to narrate to troubled ways of looking at water and water pollution, water commodification, and victimhood. So we don't use the term extractivism specifically, but of course it's a project that is all around. Water is the central point, but then a lot of narratives that relates to how water is extracted, is polluted, is commodified, and the victims of these processes, but also troubling those narrations of the victims. So how can we represent these people? What can we learn from them, and how can we truly listen to them? So also conducting research in a non-extracted way. So I've seen many connections between the 2 projects, and I also noticed how many of the projects presented in the Extracting Us exhibition touch upon or narrate and also trouble as well different ways of looking at water. I mean, Dead Water by Marilene Ribeiro, but also the Tapestry Collective work, and of course the work by May and Abdallah Naim on the river in Kalimantan. So the centrality of water is always there. So there are many connections, and I hope we can collaborate also, because some of us are also part of the WICO network, and it would be nice to expand this collaboration and continue the conversations together between the 2 projects. So yeah, just wanted to thank everyone and wave this connection, water connection. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Irene. Your exhibition was really fascinating. So yeah, I think that the connections between these pieces of work are really important. I wondered if there's any others who perhaps would like to share something that resonates with what we've been discussing, or specific questions if they have anything they want. And I see that Mai has very kindly put the link to the that exhibition into the chat. So if anyone wants to take a look, then that's something that you can do. Yeah, Micah, you have your hand up.
Well, yes, I just have a little question that maybe, well, everybody can answer, but just because it was resonated to what Sandro said as well. And it was that despite this field work is like mine, which is focused on people, the work I did not have them. And then I was thinking of, you know, what, I just forgot the name of the last person that just talked to us. Lorraine said, and it was about, you know, how to learn from the people about extractivism. So, I mean, there is always this human on human, but then I was thinking that at least what came out in the plurality works, at this example of extracting us, I mean, some of the works of some of the authors decided to show and work, or maybe show humans, and some others didn't want to. So I was wondering if there was a connection, or it was like a kind of discrepancy between an artistic work and an ethnographic work, or if it was, or yes, or and, let's see, even a question of choice in terms of the theme and the meaning behind the theme, or the interpretation behind the theme. I don't know if it's coherent, we can go on with this, otherwise let's give up.
That's a very interesting question. Does anybody like to respond to that? From the contributors or any in the audience? Yeah, go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, it was actually deliberate. I mean, and it's precisely, I mean, I work with refugees, and we all have this image of refugees, and these images of displacement are so overly exploited that it was actually intentional to show a refugee camp which does not match the generic refugee camps that we are used to see in the news, in the media, but also with regard to the very people. I mean, the people that inhabited this place that I've been studying do not match the refugee that we often see in the TV, in media, in other news outlets. So it's, and if we, and precisely, I mean, there are other theoretical ideas behind this, the idea of invisibility, because once these people are enclosed in one refugee camp, we tend to forget about them. So there's also a layer of meaning, intentional. I don't know if then it actually is consequential or conveyed in the best way, but and the idea of having the absence of people, it doesn't mean, because I mean, we are always there. I mean, we are always there. There will always be some slice of plastic that was left recalling us that there's a human around. So, I mean, everything is a plantation nowadays. So we are everywhere in some sense. So not showing us is actually not necessarily avoiding the fact that we are there. I don't know if this.
Yes, can I jump in? Yeah, just jumping on this question of visibility and invisibility, I find it very interesting. Well, in my own work, it's very focused on the portraits. So you do have a representation of people, but then at the same time, this question of visibility and invisibility was central in the choice of the mode of representation and choosing animation and animation portraiture, because I didn't want to represent female minors because of questions of anonymity, because they're in a position of heavy stigmatization. And there were like big questions around representations and also drawing. So which kind of shape do we choose? Is that relevant to actually just draw a face? And Kate Jessup, the animator, really worked on the question of the materiality of the body and the relationship with coal. And this is when we arrived to this idea of the coal woman. So she's basically like made out of coal. And in a way that was a way to just challenge this idea of like representation and fixed representation, which I think is really important because we don't want to caricature either and find, again, always the similar tropes, which I found like much more difficult with the ethnographic film, because I think that you can very easily interpret in very caricatural way scenes, for instance, of like children being down in the mines and looking at me with like a very sad face. And I remember showing this ethnographic film to the Royal Anthropological Institute ethnographic film festival and having comments about, you have to be careful with these types of images, because all my actually writing work is focused on nuances around child labor and the fact that it can be, you know, it's not only a place of exploitation, which is, you know, the reality of people, what people are experiencing there. But then at the same time, there is like the risk of caricature of it with film that is just, yeah.
Can I just, this idea of anonymity, I think it's key. But as Luz was also writing, this idea of extracting the images of our own interlocutors. No, it's so predatory. It can turn out to be so predatory also. No, so yeah, always in muddy ground of doing this sort of more visual, more creative approaches that can actually compromise the people and their livelihoods. I don't know.
I want to answer Micah's question. Yeah, so it was an outcome that the people I interviewed was not in the exhibition. It was the choice of them. So I explained to them the idea that I want to do this exhibition and the idea I want to tell, and what's their suggestion of what I can display and what they don't feel comfortable for me to display. So we actually took a lot of photos, but at the end we decided to use the creation of the women to represent themselves in the exhibition, which I find it amazing because without seeing the image of another human being, the same species, without the steps of identifying similar feature, different features, and then positionalities, it focuses on the materiality of the things that talks about meanings. So that's how it became how it was.
Thanks for you. Does anyone else want to answer that question, or does anyone have an Alice?
Yeah, I would. I found that really provocative and reminded me of yeah, in the process of putting my work together. So I've got this the photo series, which is a kind of like a montage of different people resisting at the gates of the Horse Hill site over many years, and I thought that would be like a really powerful way to kind of like pay tribute to all these people who've been there for so long and showing up and doing these things in different ways that are true to them. Some of them kind of direct action, some of them peaceful, spiritual, reflective, and like putting the people in this space, especially those I've been working with. But in the process of doing this and kind of collecting the images from the different activists who I've been in contact with, it was so interesting, like the feedback I was getting about how it wasn't quite doing justice to a lot of the other activism that's going on, and the lack of visibility that that this kind of work is given. So, for instance, a lot of legal work or research or writing letters, these kind of things that don't fall into this. I guess I fell into the trope of what activism looks like. So I think that's a really interesting question of how else maybe we can show agency without showing just people. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Yeah, Helen.
Well, since I'm one of the people Alice is talking about, I just wanted to respond to that, because actually, as I've been listening to you all, I actually felt that I was given agency by being validated through her work. So something that she added that was a new dimension to what we're doing here at Horse Hill and Extinction Rebellion was the fact that we were actually connected with that soil at Horse Hill. You know, I go and stand there, we go and slow walk past it, but I never really thought about the soil beneath that was being raped, trammeled, whatever adjective you want to use. So it certainly added something, and to sit with fellow activists and do something like her clay workshop, which was really regenerative, you know, took us away from the, you know, confrontational things that we do, and gave us something back. So I just thought it would be interesting to add that into what Alice has said, because yes, there are tropes and there are things that we fall into, but one of the things that was a plus from the other side of the fence, so to speak, was to be reconnected with the actual stuff of the soil. And I found the film clip of Alice's really moving, because I watched those lorries, but I never really made the, so you know, what artists do so often for us is make those connections that we, you know, that are there somewhere, but we're not making them. So I just want to thank you all for making those connections, you know, particularly Pedro with the refugee work. It's just fantastic to have, you know, this wealth of thought and creativity going into helping us to make the connections. So thank you all very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Is there anyone else who, I don't know if I've missed hands or anyone else in the chat? Well, I wanted to share, I put all the responses from the from some of the mentions in the chat into a word cloud, and it's a slightly maybe it can tell us something interesting. Let me see. Well, there's someone in the chat who is saying, Paula, I don't have a question specifically, but as a Brazilian artist and naturalist, the theme of extraction, exploitation, environmentalism is being discussed much deeper in countries that actually practice colonialism, even if it was centuries ago. But the perspective of exploitation almost never listened the exploited. I think this exhibition could give voice to the ones not always listened to. So is there any maybe comments in relation to that? Yeah, Micah?
Sorry, I have a little comment in it. I think it's, well, thank you, Paulo, for this. And if, for example, it's I think it depends on scale as well, that this debate from a post-colonized country. And I can say that from the perspective of Trinidad and Tobago, the place where I worked and I do back and forth. Because it's a tiny country, 1 million people. So of course, compared to Brazil, is a little town. And this tiny country has, during the, for example, in the process of the independence, which happened in the 60s, so pretty late, took over the practice of extractivism of oil and gas and became national. And for that reason, for example, it's very interesting and it's very confusing and very complex, the discussion about and behind the extractivism, for example, on site. And because it depends on the point of view, on the political representation, for example, political party, and on each person, what does he feel towards, he or she feels towards extractivism, because it can become voice of, as you say, in the case that you are explaining or the case that you work in and you live in, has a kind of colonial power that is still reproducing itself in different forms. And for other reasons, and for other people, at least that I was able to talk with, at least in Trinidad, has new, let's say, new colonial power, where finally they can appropriate the power itself for their own country. So it's very ambiguous, at least in my case. This debate, which is present, but it's not the only one, just to give more complexity to your comment, Paula.
Paula, did you want to say anything else, or?
No, thanks. My English is not the best, and I get nervous in English in front of many people I don't know. But it's something that I feel that being like a Brazilian artist, we don't have a very much of a voice. And sometimes I see works that are being done in the Amazon, or I don't know, Amazon is just an example, but people that come from Europe and to talk about a reality that they don't live in, but they get awarded and they get, I don't know, they are listened to, but the people who are dealing with these issues, they are not being listened to. So when I didn't have the possibility to actually see the exhibition, but while I was going to the website, I could see that many artists were from Brazil, and it made me very glad to see that you were actually trying to give like visibility to these ones that are not always visible. That's what I like to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. That's yeah, a lot of the work with Mary. Thanks for facilitating that. And so it's 25 past, and I just wanted to, unless there's any other burning questions, but we wanted to make sure we keep a bit to the time. Just wanted to share a word cloud quickly from what people had shared in the comment box, and and as you see, there's quite the big word in the middle, violence, and there's I guess you can have a little look, but I was just wondering, just maybe in response to this, if anyone has any last remarks or reflections about how this question about how can we think about or how might we think about extractivism and extractive landscapes and experiences in different and more complex ways, and whether there's any, anything that you've taken from the conversation today.
I guess I'd like to make a small contribution, which is to think of the actual, the other things, this non-human perspective. We're very involved in our own activities, and sometimes it's really easy to forget that most of the world is not made up of us. We're just commentators on, what we see and what we've learned, and how we're kind of projecting those thoughts. And I guess it's like having a rethink about the actual materials, and it's not just, for me, it's not just people, the invisibility for me is actually, I think, the earth, which makes up, the vast majority of our space. So it was just a comment to throw in. We're concerned with ourselves and what's going on with others, but we don't think kind of beyond the human. It's what about the others? Animals, rocks, trees, all the other stuff.
Thanks. Are any other thoughts or comments from contributors or people in the call, still in the call? And then Sandra? Is it Sandra or someone else? Oh, Sandra Martins. Yes. Did you want to say something? Oh yeah. How does your work reflect views and perspectives of what the future looks like? Very interested in what is happening now and how we got there, but more interested in how does your work reflect what you want in the future and alternatives. Anyone want to go for that? Mike, maybe Micah first and then Liz.
Okay, just very quickly, I mean, just because I already asked myself the question for a year now, so I have a quick answer, and then let's see. The first time that I showed this, at least some of the photos, because it's a work in progress, so I keep adding things, to some of the people in one of our residencies, which was mainly for a community center. We were talking, I mean, how can we use this in order to, you know, to ask people from the little village to look at these photos. So in the very end, it came out that one of the people of, you know, somebody that took a drink and came there and said, wow, these photos let me see the future. And so thinking of the future, I was wondering, my work after this discussion became, okay, how are you going to image your future? And what you want to do through this imagination to let it become real or not. So this is, I hope, the meaning of the work, or at least mine.
Thanks, Micah. Liz, or you had a comment?
Yeah, it's just, I think, well, last year I made a film about a post-human future, which was, you know, in the terms of a geological timescale, I'm thinking about where rock becomes smaller rock and so on, you know, from a mountain to a grain of sand, and that process is repeated. You know, it's a huge time scale. And I thought the time that we're here and the time that we're discussing all of this, you know, it seems quite short. And so I think I project another dimension of time through my work.
Thanks, Liz. I think maybe if we could have maybe some informal conversation if people want to continue after this, but Persephone, do you want to just yeah, kind of formally close the event and invite whoever wants to continue?
I think you've just done it. Yeah, thank you all very much for coming. The exhibition will remain online, won't it? And yeah, it'll be there for a number of years, hopefully, and possibly with new works emerging. So keep checking in, and we'll be sharing this film with subtitles on the Onca YouTube channel. It's lovely to see everyone. Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're just going to kind of potentially hang around a bit longer for people who want to.
Yeah, so I think if you need to leave and you want to, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, and if you'd like to stay or answer more to that question, yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye, Pedro.
Can I just give a reflection?
Thank you for everything. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yes, Kate, go ahead.
It was, I guess that someone had asked about whether recording a Zoom meeting was extractivist, and I just been thinking about what the difference is between creatively communicating and making visible, and it being extractivist. And I guess what I notice in the poetry of this space, and in that it is relational, and that people are thinking together really hard. So something is alive here, which hasn't been pre-planned or concluded on before it happening. That to me seems full of value, because it changes the future. It participates in us changing through coming together and learning together. And I guess it's what I notice in these different projects, that the effect of turning up and doing the work and asking people to reflect on their lives and the practices all around them is taking part in that transformation. So it feels
it feels different from replicating extractivism. I wish I had put that in a question.
Liz, or no, was it Pedro had said that comment? No, I forget. Yeah, I think that's also, you know, interesting, because we've been asking ourselves, yeah, what does, you know, what do we mean by extractivism as well? How is that defined? And I think that's a really interesting comment you made, Kate. Is like, is it something? Is it different from something that's created through relation and through care? But also Mai's point is like, in extractive context, and there can also be a presence of care that's not, you know, that. So it can be troubling as well. So yeah, it's interesting, yeah, question. Anyway.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also this reflection about the relation between researcher and the people and the location that you know research, is how it's then become, in a way, maybe also extractives. But then there is many reflection on that also in the Wego, how to because in some location also, for example, in my research location is really remote area, and then sometimes the issue is not if you not become make or there is many victim, or you annoyed or disturbing the central state, they will not hear about the situation actually. So the reflection also bring to thinking about how makes the research or things like that become the life project, your life project. It's not just talk in your research, but it's actually a long relation with the people there, to care each other some way with all our limitation and the partial knowledge that we understand during have relation with the people. So it's always, there is a way to continuing the relation actually in the space of extractives. That's my reflection.
I think what's so amazing is like how rich this whole forum is, and you know, including the exhibition and everybody's contributions and all the participants kind of joining in to this conversation. You know, it's pretty incredible really that we can take all this work forward. I'd just like to say thank you, because it's, for me, it's like I feel richer, you know, from being connected with people that I have never met, and yet through this forum, I know that there's conversations that are going to go forward. So it's completely brilliant, and this is the space to do it. You know,
Yeah, and hopefully we'll find ways of doing in-person things as well in future. I really hope that some of that might change. And you know, speaking about the different works that, you know, how they would work differently in a physical space and engage in an embodied way. And I was just thinking actually, Maya was saying about, and Kate, you were saying about that relational element, and I was also thinking, you know, what is the role of, you know, creative practice and imagination, and doing, you know, stepping into these other practices. And I know for me, doing kind of more creative work in my academic space is something that can be quite challenging sometimes, and, you know, needs a lot of other work that's not necessarily always valued, but also as, you know, as not necessarily as a researcher or as an academic, also stepping into that space of imagination and creativity that can sometimes be scary, and sometimes be, you know, it allows us maybe to get into relations in new ways. And I think that's something that's really maybe also interesting to think about moving forward, is you know, why is it that these creative interventions and practices are also so crucial for this relational way of thinking about extractivism?
Yeah, become the weaving life project of weaving.
Yeah.
Of